You're driving down an American highway, 3 lanes, huge signs, massive trucks, and a speed limit of 70 miles per hour. Now imagine you're driving through Germany. Same basic idea, a highway built to move thousands of people and tons of cargo across the country. But suddenly, there is a car behind you going 200 kilometers per hour. You're not in a video game, you're on the Autobahn. So why do American and European highways feel so different? And is one actually better than the other? Let's compare them. At first glance, American interstates and European motorways might not seem that different. They're both designed for the same basic purpose, moving people and goods over long distances, but the systems developed in very different environments. The United States is enormous. Its interstate system connects cities separated by hundreds, sometimes thousands of miles. Europe is much more compact and divided between many countries, each with its own road rules, infrastructure, and history. And Germany's Autobahn became one of the most famous motorway systems in the world, but the biggest difference you'll notice is probably speed. In the United States, there isn't one nationwide interstate speed limit. Individual states set their own limits, so what you see on an interstate can depend heavily on where you are. In some places, you might see 55 miles per hour, in others 70, 75, or even 80. Germany is a completely different story. On Autobahn sections without a posted speed limit, 130 kilometers per hour is the recommended speed. That's where the famous Autobahn reputation comes from. There are plenty of Autobahn sections with actual speed limits, but on unrestricted sections, passenger cars can legally travel faster than 130 kilometers per hour. You could be cruising along at 130 and suddenly see a car passing you at 180 or 200. That's when you realize you're not driving on an ordinary highway anymore. But speed isn't the only thing that makes the Autobahn feel different. It's also what drivers do with the lanes in Germany. The basic rule is simple: keep right and overtake on the left. Once you've finished overtaking, you return to the right when it's safe. The left lane isn't supposed to become your permanent cruising lane. When someone is approaching quickly from behind, checking your mirrors becomes very important. American highways can work differently depending on the state, road, and traffic conditions. On a busy American freeway, you'll often see vehicles spread across several lanes, with drivers changing lanes constantly. On a German Autobahn, lane discipline can feel much more deliberate. At least when traffic isn't completely ruining the plan. Then there are the trucks. If you've ever driven on a major highway, you know exactly what they can do to traffic. Trucks can completely change the rhythm of a road. American highways are famous for their enormous tractor trailers, sometimes traveling alongside you for what feels like forever. European trucks are generally designed around a different road environment, with different size and regulatory requirements. And Germany has specific rules affecting heavy vehicles, including restrictions on overtaking in certain situations. So a highway full of trucks can feel very different depending on which side of the Atlantic you're on. Then there's the road itself. American highways often feel enormous, wide roads, huge interchanges, massive signs, and long stretches of relatively straight highway. And that makes sense when you remember the scale of the United States. You can drive for hours and still be nowhere near the next major city. European motorways often feel different because they're operating in a much denser environment. You've got older cities, mountains, forests, towns, and much less empty space. Germany is a great example. One moment you're driving through a dense forest, then you're passing industrial areas, then you're approaching a major city. The highway has to fit into a landscape that has been developed for centuries, so even when both roads have 3 lanes, they can feel completely different behind the wheel. And then there's the question every driver eventually asks: how much does it cost? In the United States, some highways are toll roads, but many interstate routes can be used without paying a toll. But Europe is much more complicated. Different countries have completely different systems. France and Italy, for example, have extensive toll motorway networks. Germany is different again. Passenger cars generally don't pay a nationwide motorway toll simply for using the Autobahn, so depending on where you're driving in Europe, your road trip could involve anything from very little in motorway charges to regularly paying for the roads you use. But here's where the comparison gets complicated. It's tempting to look at the Autobahn and say, no general speed limit? That must be incredibly dangerous, but roads don't work that simply. Safety isn't just about the number on the speed limit sign. It also depends on how the roads are designed, how much traffic there is, where and when you're driving, how the rules are enforced, how safe the vehicles are, and how drivers behave. And Germany still has speed limits on many Autobahn sections. Limits can also vary depending on the road and conditions. So the real question isn't simply which country has faster highways. It's how does the entire system manage that speed? And honestly, this might be the biggest difference of all. It's the feeling. An American interstate can feel huge, relaxed, and almost endless. You might spend hours driving with the same road stretching toward the horizon. The German Autobahn can feel much more intense. You're checking your mirrors, watching the traffic, and cars can approach incredibly quickly. Trucks, construction zones, and temporary speed limits can suddenly change the rhythm, and then, just when you think you figured everything out, you look in your mirror and see a Porsche coming toward you like it has somewhere very important to be. So which one is better? Honestly, there isn't a simple answer. American highways were built around the enormous scale of the United States, with huge distances, massive road networks, and speed limits that vary between states. When European motorways operate in a much denser and more fragmented environment, with different countries using different rules and payment systems, and Germany's Autobahn stands out because some sections allow something that's extremely unusual around the world, where cars can travel without a general maximum speed limit. But that's only one part of the story. A highway isn't just asphalt and speed signs. It's the drivers, the road design, the rules, the traffic, and the culture surrounding them. Once you understand all of that, then driving on opposite sides of the Atlantic starts to feel a lot less like driving on the same road with different signs.